Today on Passion for Food, my better than the McRib barbecue sandwich. I have a confession. I've always liked the McRib. That combination of pork, barbecue, pickle, and onions really works well together. But let's face it, it's not as good as it could be. So I wanted to create my own version with better ingredients, and I think they came out great. Let's make one. For our meat here, we're going to be using pork loin. This works really well for this. I'm just going to cut off a couple of slices. Alternatively, you can just buy a package of thin-cut pork loin chops, and they will be just about the right size for this. We're looking for between 1/4 and 1/2 inch there. And with the power of internet magic, my chops are thawed and ready to be tenderized here. And I'm going to switch to a different cutting board for a couple of reasons. This little cutting board has these nice little rubber feet which help keep it in place. And also, I just don't want a bunch of hammer marks in my nice big cutting board. So, on with one of our pork chops. And because we are going to be flattening this out, we do want to lubricate the board with a little bit of water. We want it to be able to move around and expand a little without getting stuck to the board. And for this part, I'm going to be using one of these meat tenderizer mallets with the tenderizer side, not the flattening side. If you don't have one of these, you should really get one, but you can just use a sturdy glass or something like that to kind of pound that out flat. That'll get you pretty much where you want to be with this. We're going to want to keep flipping it and tenderizing. The idea here is to get it as thin as we can without ripping the meat. So keep flipping it and feeling it, making sure we're getting it as even and thin as we can here. And once we're done there, it should look something like this. Nice and consistent all the way around, nice and thin as you can see there. And we're done. This is going to be our last chance to get some seasoning in under the breading, so we're going to go ahead and salt and pepper both of these. And that's right, I said breading. We're going to be pan frying these because of course we are. So salt and pepper both sides here, and it's off to our breading station. So here we have flour and a beaten egg. This is just a standard double dip method where we go first into the flour and we shake off as much of that as we can before going into the egg and getting everything nicely coated there. And you can see I let a little bit of my egg drain off here, but you don't really need to do that. You can just go straight back into the flour. We just want to get this nicely coated all around with our flour. And the key here to get the final crust to really adhere to our pork chops is to actually let them sit in the flour for at least 15 to 20 minutes. Now the reason for that is we want the flour to actually hydrate in with the egg. If you skip this part, it won't be the end of the world, but it will mean that the crust is going to have a tendency to want to come off of your finished pork chops, and that's not quite as nice. Here we are after sitting in the flour for 20 minutes, and you can actually see why we do this in this step. You can see how everything is really stuck on there. Nicely hydrated flour, so that will stick on perfectly as we're cooking. And to cook these, I really love my cast iron. I like to get my pan hot before I add my oil. The easiest way generally to test if your oil is the right temperature is just to dip a corner of whatever you're cooking is in it. And if you get a nice sizzle, you're good to go. I could see my oil shimmering there a bit as I put it in, so I was fairly sure I was at a good temperature. So you just want to go in with your pork chops here. At this point, I dropped my heat down to medium. We don't want things getting too hot and them getting scorched on the undersides here. They're generally going to need about 2 to 3 minutes per side, depending on how thin you got them. But you do want to pay attention here, make sure it's bubbling away nicely and it's not starting to smoke. If you do see any ominous signs of smoking, you want to pull that off the heat and turn your heat down. Once you start suspecting that you might need to flip, you're going to want to check with your tongs. And once they're nice and golden brown, we go ahead and give those a flip. I tend to find that the second side cooks up a whole lot quicker than the first, so let's stick around and keep an eye on these. They may cook at slightly different rates. I had one here that curved in slightly on me, so it took it a little longer to cook than the other one. You can see I pulled that one off and I gave the other one a little longer. If you find any excess oil, it is perfectly fine to blot that off. That's what I did there. And once they're good to go, you want to go ahead and pull them off and give them a light coating of salt. You want to salt them right as they come out of the oil, that way it sticks on nicely. And now we're ready to put together our sandwich. So in our lineup for this, we have some barbecue sauce along with a fresh roll, our meat, and the pickles and onions. I'm going to go ahead and slice up my pickles and onions here on my trusty mandolin. Just makes things a little bit quicker, but you can easily just slice these up with a knife as well. And just a quick note on the bread rolls here. These were some Italian style rolls that I found. And out of all the different sub and hoagie rolls that were available, these were the freshest, so that's what we got. So let's put together the final sandwich here. I cut these onions quite thin, almost like shaved onions, so I like to really kind of heap them on the bottom like that. They really nestle in there perfectly. And because we pan-fried our pork, we have lots of these nice nooks and crannies for the barbecue sauce. And we're going to get a great contrasting texture with the soft, tenderized pork and that little bit of crispy crust on the outside, along with that barbecue sauce, of course. And our pickles go on top here. You can apply as many as you like, of course. And I just like to give my sandwich a little bit of a press once we're done there to make sure everything's nicely combined together. And we're done. Our Better Than the McRib barbecue pork sandwich is ready to eat. So what foods are you passionate about? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing for weekly video recipes. This has been Graham from Passion for Food.